Hello there, everybody. This is a video about conditional statements. This is the first one in first concept in chapter 6. A conditional statement is just a fancy way of saying an if-then statement. And here's an example down here. If it's raining, then there are clouds. A conditional statement or an if-then statement always has if and it always has then. There's two parts to it. There's the if part of it, which is also sometimes called the hypothesis. And there's also the then part of it, which is kind of called the conclusion, which is sometimes called the conclusion. But again, always two parts, an if part and a then part. Now, any if-then statement also has what we call a converse of that if-then statement. And to write the converse of the if-then statement, all you have to do is to switch the if and the then parts around. So instead of if it's raining, then there are clouds, it would be if there are clouds, then it is raining. So the words if and then stay there, stay where they were, but the parts that immediately follow them switch around. So it's raining was right after if. When you do the converse, it's right after the then. So the if and the then parts they switch around. Now there are kind of two others. There's an inverse of an if-then statement and a contrapositive as well. Before I get to those, let's talk a little more generally about if-then statements. We can kind of write in a general if-then statement like this: if A, then B. And A and B are just statements. In this case, A is it's raining, and B is there are clouds. But they're just kind of general statements. Now, when you have a statement, an if-then statement like that, which incidentally, if-then statements can also be written as what we call arrow diagrams. So this is an if-then statement. We can also write them as arrow diagrams, and they mean the exact same thing. An arrow diagram for this would be A, and then an arrow, and then B. So the first part, the A, is the if part. The second part is the then part. You would just read this as if A, then B, or A leads to B, something like that. But if A, then B, and arrow or A, arrow B mean the exact same thing. So the converse. Let's talk about the converse. Okay, so how do you write the converse of an if-then statement? We already talked about that a little bit. All you've got to do is switch the A and the B parts around. If you're writing it as an arrow diagram, it would be B, arrow, A. And that would be the converse of the original one, which was if A, then B. So what is the inverse of an if-then statement? Okay, what is the inverse? Well, you take the original statement, if A, then B, and for the inverse, you simply put not in front of them. So if not A, then not B. And it is as simple as that. For the arrow diagram, it would be not A leads to not B. And you may have noticed that there is one more, and that is the contrapositive. Now the contrapositive kind of does a combination of the converse and the inverse. It not only switches them around, but it also puts the nots in there as well. So if we're always looking from our original statement here, if A, then B. The contrapositive switches the A and the B around and puts nots in front of it. So it would be if not B, then not A. And the arrow diagram would be not B, arrow, not A. So let's see these in a kind of a more real context here. So we wrote, oops. So we said for the converse, you just simply switch them around, and that's what we did here. We started with if it's raining, then there are clouds. If there are clouds, then it's raining. We just switched them around. Now the inverse puts nots in front of them. It doesn't switch the A and the B around. It just puts nots in front of them. So we're starting with this original statement up here, and we just put not. We just put the kind of the opposite. So of each part. If it's not raining, then there are no clouds. Now, I didn't exactly put not in front of each one. I mean, I did here, but I didn't put the word not here. It's just the opposite. There are clouds. The opposite of that is there are no clouds. The opposite of it's raining is it's not raining. Okay, so it's really kind of the opposite that you're putting in there. Sometimes putting in not works. Sometimes you gotta fiddle with the grammar a little bit to make it work, but that's how you do it. Now the contrapositive, you switch them around and you put not in there. So the contrapositive, again, starting with this original statement, if there, are not clouds, then there are, then it is, if there are, I'll say it the same way I did before. If there are no clouds, then it is not raining. And there we go. That is how you write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of an if-then statement. Now we can also talk about these being true or false. So let's look at these statements individually. If it's raining, then there are clouds. So you got to ask yourself, is that a true statement? Think of all the days that you have ever experienced where it's been raining. Are there always clouds in the sky? The answer is yes, because rain comes from clouds. So this one is true. Let's go on to the next one. So the first part of it is really what you know about the day. It's what you know to be true. And from that, can we draw the conclusion that's at the end? That's what we're asking. If there are clouds, then it is raining. Is that true? Well, think about all the days that you can think of where there are clouds. Is it raining in every one of those days? The answer is no, it's not. So that, sometimes it was, but sometimes it's not. So that one is false. And for false statements, we will always have something called a counterexample. And a counterexample is just an example that shows that this statement is false. So if there are clouds, then it's raining. So a counterexample would be a day where it would be a day with clouds when it doesn't rain. I mean, that's an example that shows that this if-then statement is not true, because there are days when it's cloudy but not raining. So again, a counterexample is just an example that shows the if-then statement is false. If it's true, there are no counterexamples, kind of by definition. So let's look at this next one. If it's not raining, then there are no clouds. Let's see. So we got to think of all the days that you can think of when it's not raining. That's all we know about it. It's not raining. Can we say that on every one of those days that there are no clouds? I don't think so. I think that's false. So if it's false, that means we have to have a counterexample. So can we have no rain and clouds? Of course we can. So a day without rain, or I could just say cloudy day without rain. How about that? Cloudy day without rain. It's very similar to what we had as the counterexample for the last one. Okay, so if there are no clouds, then it is not raining. So you're thinking of all the days you can think of where there are no clouds in the sky at all. For all of those days where there are no clouds, is it also not raining? Yep, because rain comes from clouds. If there's no clouds, it can't be raining. Therefore, this one is true. So that is my lesson. Hope this makes sense. See you in class. Bye.